The first thing Nolan Hayes heard was not his daughter crying. It was the low, broken whine of his German shepherd pressed against the nursery door at 2:17 in the morning. Not barking. Not panicking. Just that deep, strained sound that made every nerve in Nolan's body go tight. He was out of bed before he was fully awake, bare feet hitting cold hardwood, pulse already climbing. Across the dark hallway, Coda stood broad and rigid in front of the nursery, shoulders locked, ears pinned forward, one paw braced against the bottom of the door like he was holding something back. Or someone out. Nolan had kicked doors in on 3 continents. He had heard gunfire in stairwells, mortar alarms over desert bases, dying men trying to keep their voices steady on broken radios. But something about the silence behind that nursery door frightened him more than any of it. If this doesn't shake you, nothing will. And if you've ever trusted a dog more than your own instincts, stay with me, because Nolan was about to learn the difference between a dog guarding a room and a dog stopping you from dying at the threshold. "Coda," Nolan whispered. The shepherd didn't look at him. That alone was wrong. Coda always checked in. Since Nolan had brought his daughter, Emma, home from the hospital 6 weeks earlier, the dog had become her shadow. He slept outside her nursery every night, followed every diaper change like it was a mission briefing, and once nudged Nolan awake before the baby monitor even made a sound. Hyper-alert, emotionally tuned, retired military working bloodline, Coda noticed everything first. But tonight was different. Tonight, he wasn't protecting the nursery. He was blocking it. Nolan moved closer. Coda instantly shifted sideways and put his whole body between Nolan and the doorknob. A warning. Not aggression. Not confusion. A warning. From inside the room, the baby monitor on the hall table crackled with a soft burst of static. Then came the faint turning sound of the crib mobile. Nolan's head snapped toward the monitor. That mobile was dead. Its batteries had run out 2 nights ago. Coda let out another low whine and briefly bared his teeth, not at Nolan, but at the door. Something cold slid through Nolan's chest. He knelt, slowing his breathing, forcing his mind into the old shape. Observe first. Move second. He looked at the gap beneath the nursery door. Darkness. Stillness. Then, for half a second, a shadow passed across the strip of dim light under the door. Nolan froze. Not Emma. She was too small to even stand, too small to crawl out of her crib. Someone was inside. Coda finally looked at him, and in that one look Nolan saw the same thing he had once seen in Afghanistan, just before a teammate opened the wrong door and disappeared in a flash of heat and with splinters. Don't touch it. Nolan's throat went dry. 3 years earlier, on a compound raid outside Kandahar, a handler's dog had frozen exactly like this at a doorway. Nolan had overruled the hesitation. Cleared the entry fast. Standard procedure. Necessary momentum. The pressure plate inside had killed Torres before his body hit the floor. Nolan still saw it at night. He had told himself for years that speed saved lives. Coda's eyes now told him something harsher. Speed also got people killed. The monitor crackled again. This time a faint lullaby spilled through the speaker. Soft. Tinny. Rotating. Emma's mobile. Impossible. Nolan reached toward the door anyway, slowly, carefully, and Coda grabbed the sleeve of his t-shirt in his teeth and yanked him backward hard enough to stagger him off balance. That did it. Nolan backed away from the nursery and scanned the hall. Guest room window. Shared roofline. Exterior approach. He moved fast but silent, grabbing the pistol from the bedside safe, his phone, and the small tactical flashlight he had not used since the life he was trying to leave behind. On his way back into the hallway, he touched Coda once on the shoulder. Hold. The dog stayed planted at the nursery door, trembling with effort, eyes locked on the crack beneath it. Nolan slipped into the guest room, raised the window inch by inch, and let the cold night air hit his face. Wind moved through the oak trees outside with a dry whisper. The house sat on the edge of a dark cul-de-sac, quiet, suburban, ordinary. Nothing about it felt ordinary now. He climbed onto the sloped roof and moved low along the shingles, one hand on the gutter line, the other keeping the pistol tight to his chest. The nursery window came into view ahead, opened by less than an inch. He had locked it before bed. His pulse slowed instead of quickened. That was how it always happened. The closer danger got, the calmer he became. Nolan crouched beneath the window, listening. Inside the room, the mobile turned with a tiny mechanical click. Then he heard it. Breathing. Not baby breathing. Adult. Controlled. Close to the crib. Nolan rose a fraction and used the edge of his flashlight to lift the curtain without exposing his face. The nursery glowed in the pale spit of moonlight and the weak projector stars from Emma's nightlight. His daughter lay in the crib, still asleep. And 3 feet from her, half hidden in the corner by the rocking chair, a man in dark clothes stood motionless with one gloved hand inside a black bag. Nolan's vision narrowed. The intruder wasn't rifling drawers, wasn't taking electronics, wasn't there for money. He was watching the crib. The bag on the floor was already open. Inside it, Nolan saw zip ties, a folded blanket, a small bottle with tubing attached, and a second phone propped against the wall, playing the lullaby through a portable speaker. A setup. A snatch. Coda hadn't been keeping Nolan away from Emma. He had been stopping Nolan from opening a door, while an abductor waited in the dark with a direct line of sight to the nursery entrance. The realization hit so hard it almost made him sick. The man reached toward the crib. Nolan moved. He drove the window up with one violent shove and came through low and fast. The intruder spun, quicker than Nolan expected, bringing up a compact pistol fitted with a suppressor. Nolan hit his arm before the weapon cleared chest height. The shot punched into the ceiling with a dull cough. Emma woke instantly and screamed. The room exploded. Nolan slammed the intruder into the changing table, wood cracking under the impact. The suppressed pistol skidded under the dresser. The man drove a blade upward from his sleeve, catching Nolan along the ribs in a hot line of pain. Nolan trapped the wrist, crushed it against the wall, and drove his forehead into the man's nose. Bone gave. The intruder staggered back, and the nursery door burst inward. Coda. The shepherd hit the man from the side with enough force to lift him off his feet. They crashed into the rocking chair, which flipped backward into the wall. The man screamed and tried to shield his throat, while Coda locked onto his forearm and dragged him away from the crib. "Nolan!" a voice cried from the hallway. His wife, Mara. "No!" Nolan shouted without turning. "Stay back!" He scooped Emma from the crib with one arm, pressing her against his chest as she wailed, tiny body shaking. With his free hand, he snatched the lamp from the table and hurled it into the intruder's shoulder as the man reached for his ankle holster. Coda got there first. Another savage lunge. Another scream. Then the knife clattered across the floorboards. Nolan handed Emma off blindly toward the hall where Mara, white-faced and barefoot, grabbed the baby and stumbled back. Nolan pivoted, seized the intruder by the jacket, and drove him face first into the wall beneath the painted moon decals over Emma's crib. "Who sent you?" The man spat blood and tried to twist free. Nolan hit him once in the kidney, hard enough to drop him. "Who sent you?" The intruder laughed. That laugh was worse than the knife. Because it wasn't desperate. It was confident. Coda's growl deepened. Police sirens had not started yet. No neighbors were shouting. No porch lights had come on. The whole world outside the nursery still slept, while Nolan's old life stood bleeding on the carpet beside his daughter's crib. The man turned his head just enough to look at Coda. "Smart dog," he rasped. Then he looked at Nolan and smiled through the blood. "He knew before you did." Nolan's fist tightened in the man's collar. "Knew what?" The intruder's eyes flicked toward the hallway. Toward Mara. Toward Emma. Then back to Nolan. "That the room wasn't the target." Every muscle in Nolan's body went cold. He turned. In the hall, Mara stood clutching Emma too close, both of them lit by the weak blue glow of the baby monitor. And just behind Mara, on the entry table beneath the stairs, Nolan saw something he knew had not been there when they went to bed. A second black bag, half unzipped, with a blinking red light inside. Coda barked once, violent, explosive, urgent, and Nolan finally understood why the dog had thrown himself in front of the nursery door. He hadn't been trying to keep Nolan out. He had been keeping the whole family from running straight into the hallway bomb. The red light inside the black bag blinked once. Then again. Slow. Patient. Merciless. For one frozen heartbeat, Nolan Hayes did not move. Mara stood in the hallway clutching Emma against her chest, the baby crying so hard her tiny face had turned red. The monitor on the entry table glowed blue beneath the stairs. Beside it, half hidden in shadow, the second black bag sat where no bag had any right to be, unzipped just enough to reveal coiled wire, gray putty, and that blinking "Back into the bedroom," Nolan said, voice flat with control. "Slowly. No sudden steps. Keep Emma's head down." Mara's eyes widened. "Nolan, now." She obeyed. 1 foot back. Then another. Emma screamed against her shoulder. The intruder beneath Nolan gave a low laugh through broken teeth. "Too late." Nolan drove his forearm harder into the man's neck. "You wired the hall?" The man coughed, smiled again, and said nothing. Coda's growl changed. Nolan knew that sound. The dog had found something else. Not in the hall. On the man. Nolan shifted just enough to keep the intruder pinned while glancing down. Coda had his muzzle pressed near the man's jacket pocket, teeth showing, nostrils flaring. Nolan jammed a hand into the pocket and ripped out a slim black remote no bigger than a garage opener. Dead man switch. His blood went cold. The blinking light under the stairs was only part of the problem. Nolan crushed the remote in his fist and threw it across the room. "Mara, bedroom. Close the door. Stay off the center of the hallway. Hug the wall." Mara backed away, trembling now, one hand over Emma's head. She vanished into the master bedroom and kicked the door shut. Nolan exhaled once. Then the baby monitor crackled. A male voice came through the speaker. Calm. Distorted. Close enough to sound intimate. "Wrong one." Nolan turned toward the hall. The voice continued through a burst of static. "If you're hearing this, it means Briggs failed." The man under Nolan stopped smiling. So that was his name. Briggs. Coda barked once at the monitor, then looked toward the front of the house, ears high, body suddenly taut in a new direction. Nolan's spine tightened. There was another man outside. Maybe more. He snatched the monitor from the table inside the nursery and brought it close. "Who is this?" A soft chuckle hissed through the speaker. "You used to clear rooms faster, Hayes." That voice hit Nolan harder than the bomb. Not because he recognized the name. Because he recognized the tone. Military. Older. Unhurried. The speaker crackled again. "The dog almost ruined it." Nolan's eyes flicked to Coda. The shepherd had stopped looking at Briggs entirely. Now he was facing the dark window over Emma's crib, hackles raised again. Movement outside? Nolan stepped sideways, keeping low, pulling Briggs with him by the collar. "Talk." But the monitor had gone silent. Nolan shoved Briggs face first onto the nursery floor and zip-tied his wrists with the restraints from the intruder's own bag. Fast. Tight. Then he yanked the man's bootlaces free and bound the ankles too. Briggs fought once. Kota lunged forward with a guttural snarl so violent it ended the struggle immediately. "Good choice," Nolan muttered. He crossed to the nursery window and used 2 fingers to peel back the curtain. Dark lawn. Mailbox. Quiet street. The faint wash of porch light over trimmed hedges. Nothing. Then a reflection in the glass gave it away. Not outside. Above. Someone on the covered porch roof line, just beyond the angle of the window. Nolan dropped hard an instant before suppressed shots punched through the nursery glass. The window burst inward in glittering shards. One round buried itself in the painted wall above the crib. Another ripped through the rocking chair. Kota sprang backward with a bark, then lunged forward again, snarling at the broken window. Nolan rolled behind the dresser, drew his pistol, and fired twice through the gap where muzzle flash had flickered. A shape moved over the roof line. Fast. Professional. Gone before Nolan's second shot cracked. Emma cried from the bedroom. Mara shouted his name once, then stopped herself. Good. Nolan crawled low across the nursery floor, glass crunching under his forearms, and reached the bedroom door. "Mara! Answer me! I'm here! You hurt? No, stay down! Mattress side, not door side. Keep Emma low! What is happening?" Nolan looked at the hallway bag through the cracked doorway. "Someone came for the house," he said. "I'm going to fix it." Briggs laughed again from the floor. Nolan turned and hit him once in the ribs with the pistol. The man folded, gasping. Kota moved to the doorway and planted himself there, staring at the hall bag, then at the front of the house, then back to Nolan. Threat 1. Threat 2. Moving danger outside. Static danger inside. The dog suddenly stepped toward the hallway, nose low, then stopped halfway to the stairs and whined. Not at the bag. At the floorboard just before it. Nolan crouched lower and aimed the flashlight beam along the hardwood. Fishing line. Clear. Fine. Nearly invisible. Stretched from the black bag across the hall runner and secured at ankle height to the leg of the entry table. A secondary trigger. If Mara had backed up normally when the baby cried, if she had pivoted with Emma and run for the nursery the way any terrified mother would, she would have hit the line and detonated the bag manually. Kota had blocked the nursery door because the direct path from bedroom to baby led straight through the kill zone. The shepherd had mapped the danger before any human in the house even knew it existed. Nolan felt a sick pulse of gratitude and horror at the same time. Then Briggs said, still breathing hard on the floor, "That's not the clever part." Nolan turned slowly. "What is it?" Briggs licked blood from his lip and looked toward the nursery ceiling. "Why, he really wanted the baby monitor on." Nolan's stomach dropped. He looked up. Smoke detector. Standard white disc in the center of Emma's ceiling. Except it wasn't in the same position it had been when he painted the room. 2 inches closer to the crib. He had moved that detector himself before Emma was born. Perfect center line. Mara had laughed at how exact he was. This one had been replaced. Kota saw Nolan's eyes shift and started barking so hard it shook the room. Nolan stepped onto the changing table for a better angle and brought the flashlight beam up under the detector. Not a detector. A camera. Microphone lens in the center. Fresh screws. Receiver unit packed into the mount. Someone had been watching the nursery long before tonight. Watching Emma sleep. Watching Mara move through the room. Watching Nolan's routines. Studying the dog. The baby monitor hadn't been bait. It had been confirmation. They knew exactly when Nolan woke. Exactly where he would move. Exactly which path he would take to reach his daughter. A cold, old anger rose through him now, different from panic, different from fear. Cleaner. More dangerous. This wasn't a burglary gone wrong. This was surveillance followed by an extraction attempt with a pre-rigged family kill box. Briggs smiled again despite the blood on his teeth. "Now you're catching up." Nolan grabbed him by the shirt and hauled him halfway off the floor. "Who sent you?" Briggs's eyes gleamed. "You don't remember what you took from Kandahar, do you?" The words hit like a punch Nolan never saw coming. Kandahar. Not Baghdad. Not Syria. Not one of the mountain raids he spent years trying to forget. Kandahar. The mission where Torres died. The mission Nolan never spoke about. The mission after which sealed evidence had vanished before debrief. Nolan felt the room tilt. Outside, somewhere near the front porch, a floorboard creaked. Coda spun toward the hallway and erupted into a savage bark. Then all the lights in the house went out at once. Complete darkness swallowed the nursery. And from the dead baby monitor speaker in Nolan's hand, the calm voice returned and whispered, "You were never supposed to keep that file, Chief." Darkness hit the house like a blow. 1 second Nolan Hayes could see the shattered nursery window, the zip-tied intruder bleeding on the floor, the faint red blink from the hallway bag beyond the cracked doorway. The next, everything vanished. No lamp glow from the street. No stars from Emma's nightlight. Just black air, Emma crying from the master bedroom, and Coda's bark detonating through the dark. Nolan dropped instinctively, one hand hitting the nursery floor, the other bringing his pistol up toward where the doorway had been. "Down!" he shouted toward the bedroom. Mara answered with mattress springs and one sharp breath. Good. She was moving low. Emma kept crying, small and panicked and alive. The distorted voice from the dead monitor had gone silent again. That bothered Nolan more than if it had kept talking. Men who needed fear made noise. Men who trusted the setup let silence do the killing for them. Coda was no longer barking at the hallway. He was growling. Low. Sustained. Moving. Nolan clicked on his tactical light for less than a second and swept the beam across the nursery. Briggs on the floor, blood down his mouth. Broken glass everywhere. The cracked camera disguised as a smoke detector over the crib. Open window. No second shooter in sight. Then Nolan killed the light. A suppressed shot cracked from the hall and punched through the nursery doorframe exactly where the flash had been. Splinters sprayed Nolan's cheek. Flash discipline. Sideline bait. Draw him into illuminating the room. Let the hallway kill box and darkness follow him into a predictable angle. Nolan flattened beside the changing table, breathing slow through his nose. He had done this before in mud compounds and stairwells. But this was worse, because behind one wall his wife held their 6-week-old daughter, and outside the wall somebody who knew Kandahar was hunting him through his own house. Briggs laughed weakly in the dark. "He told me you were still fast." Nolan struck out blind and drove the pistol frame into Briggs's jaw. Bone thudded. The man went quiet except for a wet groan. "Who is he?" Nolan asked. Briggs spat blood onto the rug. "You already know." That meant Nolan did not know. Or did not remember. Either was dangerous. Coda's growl shifted again, closer to the floor now, then turning toward the broken nursery window. Nolan heard claws scrape hardwood. The dog was triangulating. Then came a sound so faint Nolan almost missed it. A soft metallic tick. Not in the nursery. Under the stairs. The black bag in the hallway. His body went cold. What if the blinking red light had never been the real timer? What if the blackout was the next phase? Motion, delay, pressure, command detonation. Whoever set this knew enough to layer triggers. "Nolan?" Mara's voice, small from the bedroom door. "Please tell me what to do." He kept his voice utterly calm. Listen carefully. Then footsteps crossed the front porch. Not running. Slow. Intentional. Coda lunged toward the nursery doorway with a vicious bark. Nolan clicked the light again for half a second, just enough to catch a silhouette sliding past the hall opening low and fast. Not porch. Inside, someone had come through the front door in the dark. Nolan fired once through the doorway. The muzzle flash lit the hall in a white freeze frame, the black bag under the stairs, the fishing line across the runner, a gloved figure moving with a carbine near the banister, and something mounted to the wall above the family photos where no device had been yesterday. Then the dark swallowed it all again. A round came back instantly, chewing through the changing table. Briggs sucked in a breath and whispered, almost admiring, "That's him." Nolan moved. He seized Briggs by the collar and dragged him across the floor into the line between the doorway and the crib. Human shield. Ugly. Necessary. Coda understood immediately and shifted left, staying outside Nolan's firing angle while keeping the door covered. Emma started crying harder. The gunman in the hall stopped shooting. Too much risk of hitting Briggs. Too much risk of damaging whatever they had really come to take. The voice returned, not through the monitor this time, but from the wall-mounted device Nolan had glimpsed during the muzzle flash. A remote speaker. Clean audio. Inside the house long before tonight. "Chief Hayes," the man said. Calm. Older. Controlled. "If you keep using my people as furniture, this conversation will start badly." Nolan's jaw locked. He knew that cadence. Not the name. Not yet. "Show yourself," Nolan said. "No, then start talking." A pause. Then, "Kandahar. Objective House 6. Hard drive seizure. 1 dead ED tech. Unlogged evidence package removed before formal debrief." Ringing any bells? "Torres. Objective House 6. The hard drive." Nolan felt the memory kick open in pieces. Dust storm at dawn. Torres kneeling by a door. A handler's dog freezing at the threshold. Nolan overruling the hesitation. Blast. Then, later, in the rear room, a scorched lockbox nobody had expected to find. Inside it, a ruggedized drive and a paper ledger wrapped in oilcloth. He had turned both over to a liaison officer because that was protocol. Except, no. Held back overnight after the blast because chain of custody was compromised. One night. Long enough to copy emergency data to a fallback secure stick after command systems went down in the storm. His breathing changed. He did remember. The voice in the wall speaker almost smiled through the words. "There is." Coda suddenly spun away from the doorway and slammed his shoulder into the nursery closet. Once. Twice. Then he growled at the baseboard. Nolan's mind raced. Closet? No. Shared wall. The nursery closet backed against the hallway under stair cavity. The bag wasn't just in the hall. It was wired through the wall. The soft metallic ticking came again, clearer now. Not timer. Relay switch. That changed everything. If the explosive had a relay node inside the wall cavity, a shot in the hall, a shock to the table, even a body drop in the wrong place might trigger the secondary. Coda pawed frantically at the closet base. The dog was showing Nolan the path around it. Nolan swept the dark closet with one tight beam. Spare diapers. Storage bins. Folded stroller frame. Access panel in the back corner where the old HVAC return had been sealed before Emma was born. Large enough for wiring. Large enough, maybe, to reach the cavity behind the stairs without crossing the hallway. He killed the light. "Briggs," he said quietly, "if that device goes off, are you inside the kill radius too?" No answer. That was answer enough. Nolan dragged Briggs backward toward the closet. The intruder fought now, panic finally breaking through. "Don't! There it is!" Nolan said. Coda barked once, sharp and violent. A suppressed shot punched through the closet door from the hall side, missing Nolan by inches. The voice in the speaker lost some patience. "He found the relay. Move!" Bootsteps rushed in the hall. More than one man. Nolan ripped open the access panel with the butt of his pistol. Dust burst into his face. Inside, bundled wiring ran through the cavity, and among it, taped to a support stud, sat a compact receiver block with fresh batteries and a blinking green status light. The relay. A second device beside it held a pressure syringe and glass vial. Not just explosives. Accelerant. Secondary flash agent. Designed to turn the hall into an oven. Nolan had maybe seconds. He shoved Briggs face first into the closet and jammed his knee into the man's spine. "Which wire?" Briggs laughed again, but now it sounded broken. "There are 3 circuits." Nolan flashed the light once. Red, blue, yellow. Classic misdirection. The hallway men were almost at the nursery. Coda backed toward Nolan, teeth bared, ready to make the doorway cost blood. The speaker crackled one last time. "You can save the room," the calm voice said. "Or you can save your family. Not both." That sentence hit with surgical precision because it reached straight through the present and found the scar left by Torres dying at the wrong door. Not this time. Nolan stopped looking at the colored wires and looked at the receiver housing instead. Fresh screws. Civilian block. Military-grade battery tape. Cheap terminal clamps. Someone good had built it fast, not elegant. Fast meant shortcuts. Shortcuts meant power routing. He ripped the battery pack free. Nothing happened. No blast. No flash. No heat. Briggs sucked in a breath. The ticking under the stairs stopped. But from the hallway came a new sound that was worse. A deadbolt turning. Slowly. From the inside of the master bedroom door. Mara screamed. And Nolan realized, with horror punching through every layer of control, that while he had been fighting the bomb in the nursery wall, someone else had already slipped around the hall and reached his wife and daughter. Mara's scream ripped through the house like a blade. Not panic. Not confusion. Pain. Immediate, sharp, human pain. Nolan moved before the sound finished leaving her throat. He kicked Briggs hard in the ribs, drove the access panel shut with his heel, and launched out of the nursery closet just as Coda hurled himself toward the doorway in a black antenna blur. The hallway was dark except for the dead red blink from the bag beneath the stairs, and the cold spill of moonlight from the shattered nursery window behind him. But Nolan did not need light to understand what had happened. While he had neutralized the relay inside the wall, someone had used the chaos to circle wide, stay outside his line of fire, and reach the master bedroom. The bedroom door stood half open. The deadbolt was turning from the outside. From the inside, Emma was crying so hard the sound broke into tiny choking bursts. Mara screamed again, then the scream cut off as if a hand had clamped over her mouth. "Coda!" Nolan shouted. The shepherd hit the hallway at full speed, claws tearing at hardwood, shoulders low, every muscle aimed at the bedroom threshold. A suppressed shot snapped from the dark and sparked off the banister. Another hit the wall above Nolan's head. He ignored both and drove forward, pistol up, taking the inside line along the hall wall to stay clear of the fishing line still stretched over the runner near the hall bag. A shape appeared at the bedroom door. Tall. Lean. Carbine raised. Nolan fired twice center mass. The figure dropped sideways out of the frame, but not before Nolan saw the body armor under the jacket and the smoothness of the movement. Not hired street trash. Trained. Fast. Disciplined. Coda hit the doorway a fraction of a second later and vanished into the dark room with a snarl so violent it sounded like furniture breaking. It was furniture breaking. Nolan reached the bedroom threshold and stopped cold. Mara was on the floor beside the bed, one hand at her throat, gasping. A red line marked the skin where someone had tried to choke or silence her. Emma lay on the mattress, still wrapped in her blanket, screaming. The bedside lamp had been smashed. The blackout curtains moved in the draft from the open window over the backyard. And at the far side of the room, pinned halfway against the dresser, a masked man fought to keep Coda's jaws off his weapon arm. There were no clean angles. The intruder had one knee up, using it to shield his chest. Coda had locked onto the sleeve and lower forearm, dragging the muzzle offline every time the man tried to level the carbine. Nolan moved left to clear Mara, but the man saw him and made the right choice instantly. He let go of the rifle. The weapon dropped. His offhand flashed to his belt. Knife. Nolan fired, but the man had already driven the blade downward, not at Coda's neck, not at Nolan, but straight into the mattress where Emma lay screaming. For one impossible second Nolan thought he had hit her. Then he understood. Not a stab. A plant. The blade had been used to pin something into the mattress beside the baby's leg. A flat black square with a blinking green light. Tracker. Camera. Audio bug. Or worse. The intruder ripped free of Coda's bite, leaving torn fabric and blood behind, bolted across the dresser top, and crashed out through the open bedroom window into the darkness outside before Nolan could shoot without risking Emma. Nolan lunged to the bed. Coda spun at once from pursuit to protection, pivoting back to the mattress and barking directly at the object pinned into the sheet. Nolan saw the tiny antenna first, then the adhesive patch underneath, then the faint printed label on the casing. Thermal tag, lived not a bomb. A beacon. He tore it loose and hurled it into the far wall. Mara crawled to the bed on shaking elbows. Emma, Emma! Nolan scooped the baby up, ran his hands over her head, neck, chest, limbs. No blood. No puncture wound. No blade strike. Only terror. She was alive. Mara grabbed his arm so hard it hurt. What is happening? Nolan looked at the blinking device on the carpet and felt a different kind of dread settle in. They're marking targets, he said. Before Mara could answer, the voice in the wall speaker returned, calm, mildly amused, close enough to feel like it was standing inside the room with them. Good correction, it said. Most fathers would have missed the tag. Nolan turned toward the sound. Show yourself. You keep asking that like you deserve a straight line. Coda left the bed and moved to the bedroom window, nose working the night air. Then he froze. His tail stiffened. Ears forward. A low whine built in his chest. Not retreating danger. Incoming. Nolan crossed to the window and risked one quick angle outside. Backyard. Fence line. Swing set. Wet silvered lawn under moonlight. Nothing. Then the thermal tag on the carpet chirped once. A soft electronic ping. The voice said, There. Nolan looked up instinctively. Above the house. A faint rotor beat pulsed through the night. Drone. His stomach dropped. Not hobby-sized. Too steady. Too heavy. The tag had not been planted to find the baby later. It had been planted so something in the air could find the room now. Down! Nolan shouted. He threw himself over Mara and Emma as Coda leapt backward from the window. Glass imploded inward. Not from bullets. From the concussive crack of a small charge dropped through the broken frame and detonated against the outer wall. The blast punched heat and dust through the bedroom, flipped the nightstand, and sprayed plaster across the bed where Emma had been lying a second earlier. Mara cried out under Nolan's weight. Emma wailed against his chest. Coda hit the floor, rolled, came up barking. The drone passed overhead with a vicious mechanical buzz, then banked away into the dark beyond the roofline. Not kill confirmed, Nolan realized. Still hunting. Which meant someone outside had visual feed and expected them to move. He dragged Mara low beside the bed. "Can you walk?" She nodded, though tears streamed down her face. "Take Emma." "Bathroom." Tubbs sighed. "No lights." "I'm not leaving you." "You're not. You're moving where I can fight." That got through. She took Emma and crawled toward the bathroom. Nolan covered the broken window until he heard the rustle of the shower curtain and Mara's shaking breath behind tile. Then he turned to Coda. The dog was not looking at the window anymore. He was staring at the family photo wall by the dresser. The same place Nolan had seen the wall-mounted speaker in the hallway during the muzzle flash. Coda stepped closer, sniffed one frame, then another, then rose on his hind legs and slammed one paw into the largest photo. Nolan in dress whites, Mara laughing beside him, Emma only a sonogram image in the frame they had chosen months ago. The frame swung crooked. Nolan grabbed it and yanked. A cavity opened in the drywall behind it. Inside sat a second transmitter node, a battery pack, and a narrow USB drive taped to the mount. His pulse stopped. The drive had a handwritten label in black marker, Hayes/Kandahar/copy 2. For 1 second the room vanished. He was back in the dust outside Objective House 6, Torres screaming, smoke rolling out the broken door, the liaison officer waiting too calmly beside the armored truck after the raid, asking too quickly whether Nolan had seen any secondary storage media inside the compound. There had only ever been one copied fallback stick. One. He had hidden it himself for less than 12 hours in a deployment Bible pouch before handing it over sealed. So how was a second copy inside his bedroom wall? The speaker crackled. "Now you're almost there," the voice said. Nolan stared at the label. "You planted this." "No, then who did?" A pause. And for the first time, the calm voice lost some of its distance. "Ask your wife." Every sound in the room seemed to vanish. "Mara, from the bathroom," said softly. "Nolan?" He turned toward the half-open door. She stood there with Emma clutched to her chest, tears on her face, fear everywhere in her posture. But when she saw the drive in his hand, something else moved across her expression first. Recognition. Not confusion. Recognition. Coda saw it too. The German shepherd stepped between them and began to growl, not at the broken window, not at the hall, not at the dark outside. At Mara. Nolan's blood went cold. Mara's voice shook. "Please don't look at me like that." He could barely hear himself. "Why does he know that drive?" She started crying harder. "I was trying to protect you." From outside the house, tires screamed at the curb. Doors opened. Boots hit pavement. And the calm voice whispered through the hidden speaker one last time before cutting dead. "She didn't hide the copy from me, Chief. She hid it from you." For a second, Nolan Hayes forgot the broken window, the men outside, the drone somewhere over the neighborhood, the blood on the nursery floor, the hallway bomb he had barely stopped from becoming a grave. All he could see was Coda. The German shepherd stood rigid between him and Mara, lips curled just enough to show white teeth, a low warning vibrating out of his chest. Not panic. Not blast shock. Not agitation from Emma crying. Recognition. That was what chilled Nolan most. Coda was not reacting to fear in the room. He was reacting to history. Mara clutched Emma tighter, her knuckles white around the blanket. The baby cried against her shoulder, tiny body shaking. Mara's face was wet with tears, but Nolan could not miss what he had already seen when the hidden drive came out of the bedroom wall. She had recognized it. Immediately. "Nolan," she whispered. Please listen to me before you decide what this looks like. Outside, another car door slammed. Voices moved near the curb. Too many for neighbors. Too controlled for panic. Whoever was still outside this house had not come to watch the operation fail. They had come to contain the aftermath. Nolan kept the pistol low but ready. Set Emma in the tub. Mara's face broke. You think I'd hurt her? I think I don't know what to think, he said. Put her in the tub. Wrap her in towels. Keep your hands where I can see them. Mara stood frozen for half a heartbeat. Koda's growl deepened. Then she moved exactly as instructed. She crossed slowly into the bathroom, lowered Emma into a nest of folded towels inside the dry tub, and kept both hands lifted away from drawers and shelves. Emma screamed, then hiccuped, then screamed again. Nolan didn't take his eyes off Mara. Talk. She looked at the drive in his hand and shut her eyes once. I found it 8 months ago. That was not the answer he expected. His voice hardened. Where? In one of your old deployment trunks in the garage. False bottom. Vacuum sealed. Labeled with nothing. I didn't know what it was at first. Nolan's mind flashed backward through years of storage, moves, locked trunks he had not opened since leaving active duty. One green Pelican case. One old footlocker with a cracked latch. One smaller black trunk Torres's wife had returned after the memorial because it had been mixed into Nolan's shipment by mistake. He felt the floor tilt. You went through my trunks? I was looking for tax papers, Mara said. And before you ask, yes, I know how that sounds. But when I found a military data stick hidden under a false panel, I stopped being your wife for about 10 seconds and became a woman holding a baby who had just learned her husband lied about what he'd brought home from a war zone. Nolan stared at her. There it was. Not betrayal alone. His own. He had never told Mara about the copy drive because he had convinced himself it no longer mattered. The official story after Kandahar was simple. Raid compromised, ED casualty, materials seized and transferred. He had lived inside that explanation because anything else meant reopening the last mission that had already cost too much. You should have come to me, he said. Mara let out a laugh so hurt it barely counted as one. You mean the way you came to me? With the panic attacks? With the locked garage door? With the night you woke up saying Torres's name and then told me it was nothing? She swallowed hard. You hid something from me that scared you enough to bury it under steel and foam. I knew if I confronted you too early, you'd either lie or throw it away. Nolan had no answer because both possibilities were true. Koda kept growling. Mara noticed. He saw me touch it. Nolan's grip tightened on the drive. When? 2 months ago. I moved it because someone had already been in the garage. That landed harder than the accusation in the speaker had. Nolan's eyes narrowed. What? There were prime marks on the side window. One of the outdoor cameras had a 6-minute gap. And Koda kept scratching at the mudroom door all night. She looked at the dog, then back at Nolan. He wasn't warning you about me. He was warning you that I knew there was something in the house people were searching for. Nolan's heartbeat slowed into that dangerous clarity he used to get just before things went bad. When were you going to tell me? I was, Mara said. Tonight. He almost laughed at the cruelty of that timing. Tonight. Yes. Why tonight? Because I met someone this afternoon. Every muscle in Nolan's body locked. Outside, footsteps crossed the porch again, slow, measured, stopping just past the broken line of the bedroom wall. Listening. Nolan lowered his voice. Who? A woman from D.C. She said she worked internal review for defense oversight. She knew your team designation, Torres's name, and the date of the Kandahar raid. She said the file you hid was not the original evidence copy. It was a shadow duplicate made after chain of custody was compromised. Nolan's mouth went dry. A shadow duplicate. That phrase was not public language. It was buried in compartmented recovery doctrine for situations where seized intelligence was considered too sensitive to trust to first-line transfer. "She gave you a name?" Nolan asked. Mara hesitated. Coda barked once. Not at her. At the bedroom wall behind Nolan. He pivoted, instant and silent, just as a tiny red dot appeared on the dresser mirror. Laser. Nolan grabbed Mara by the shoulder and yanked her down as a suppressed round cracked through the blown window and shattered the mirror where her face had been a fraction earlier. Emma screamed in the bathroom. Coda launched toward the window. Nolan fired back through the curtains, 3 fast shots toward the roofline and tree shadow beyond. The laser vanished. Silence rushed in again. Mara looked up from the carpet, shaken beyond words. "You see now? I see someone wants us all dead," Nolan said. "No," she whispered. "I think someone wants the drive, and killing us is just cleaner." That was worse. Because it meant method. Not rage. Not revenge. Containment. Nolan crawled to the broken mirror and angled one shard toward the front yard. Moonlight, a hedge, the slope of the neighbor's fence. Then a boot disappearing behind the oak near the curb. Shooter repositioning. He backed away and returned to Mara. "The woman. Name." Mara licked dry lips. "She called herself Evelyn Voss." The name hit nothing in Nolan's memory until Coda stepped away from the window, crossed the room, and nudged the USB drive in Nolan's hand with his nose. Not the drive. The tape stuck to the underside. There was something attached there. Nolan turned it over. A second layer of black electrical tape had been wrapped beneath the labeled shell. He peeled it back with his thumbnail. A microSD card slid into his palm. Mara stared. "That wasn't there when I moved it." Nolan's pulse thudded once. 2 storage layers. One obvious. One concealed. The labeled drive was bait. The smaller card was the real payload. Coda whined once and backed toward the bathroom, then looked at Nolan, then at the bedroom door, then at the hall. "Move now." Nolan understood. They had maybe seconds before the outer team breached again. He crossed to the nightstand drawer, grabbed the old laptop he kept there for taxes and offline family photos, and slammed it onto the floor. Battery in. Boot fast. No network. Good. He inserted the microSD into an adapter and loaded the directory. 3 files. 1 video. 1 encrypted folder. 1 photograph. He opened the photograph first. The room seemed to go silent around him. It was taken from above, maybe from a stairwell camera or mezzanine angle. A warehouse. Concrete floor. Crates stamped with aid markings. 4 men in civilian clothes. 1 was Briggs. 1 Nolan did not know. 1 was the liaison officer from Kandahar whom Nolan had handed the copied materials to after the raid. And the 4th? Nolan stopped breathing. Admiral Owen Burke. The same Burke who had pinned Nolan's commendation on his chest 8 months after Torres died. The same Burke who had looked him in the eye and said, "What your team recovered prevented a war." The same Burke who had attended Nolan and Mara's wedding. Mara saw the change in his face. "What?" Nolan turned the screen toward her. She went pale. On the bottom right corner of the photograph, time-stamped only 11 days earlier, sat a line of open black bags identical to the one under their stairs. Same shape. Same wiring. Same red blink. And laid out beside them were printed sheets containing photos of houses. One of those houses was theirs. Before either of them could speak, the laptop chimed softly. The encrypted folder had auto-mounted itself. A single text file appeared on the screen. It contained just 1 sentence, If Burke knows you opened this, do not call the police. For a second, neither Nolan nor Mara moved. The laptop screen glowed on the bedroom floor, throwing cold light across broken glass and the edge of Emma's blanket inside the bathroom tub. On screen, beneath the warehouse photograph, the warning sat there like it had been waiting years to reach him. If Burke knows you opened this, do not call the police. Outside, a floorboard creaked on the porch. Coda's head snapped toward the sound. The German shepherd stiffened, then turned back to Nolan and let out one sharp bark. Move. Nolan's mind raced through the trap. If Admiral Owen Burke was tied to Kandahar, the bombs, the surveillance, the drones, then local law enforcement might not be backup at all. The cars outside could be hired operators, compromised uniforms, or both. Calling 911 from inside the house might only announce that the file had been opened. Mara read the line again and whispered, "Nolan!" He closed the laptop halfway, just enough to kill the glow without shutting it down. "Bathroom." "Take Emma. Lock in. We can't stay boxed in here." "I know. I need 20 seconds to think." Emma cried again, thinner now, exhausted. Mara gathered her from the tub and pressed her against her shoulder even while her whole body shook. Coda moved to the bedroom door and planted himself there, facing the hall. Nolan looked back at the laptop. 3 files. 1 photograph already open. 1 video still untouched. 1 encrypted folder mounted by the card's own trigger. He opened the video. No title. No timestamp. Just black for half a second, then a grainy feed from what looked like a helmet camera in a dust-filled corridor. Men breathing. Boots crunching grit. Radio static. Nolan knew the geometry immediately. Objective House 6. Kandahar. His stomach dropped. The view cut through the entry corridor, past the blown outer gate, toward the room where Torres had died. Voices overlapped in the feed. One was Nolan's, younger and harder. One was Torres. One belonged to the liaison officer who had taken custody afterward. Then another voice entered the frame from behind the camera, calm and detached. Burke. Not Admiral yet. Civilian clothes, body armor under a scarf, face half covered from the dust storm, but unmistakable. The camera panned past him just long enough to catch the words he was saying to the liaison officer. If the secondary ledger exists, Hayes doesn't leave with it. Nolan stopped breathing. Mara stared at him. That's him? He nodded once. On the video, younger Nolan was yelling for a medic. Torres was down. The dog handler was screaming not to push the second doorway. Dust storm alarms wailed. Burke never moved to help. He only watched the rear room where the scorched lockbox had been found. Then the footage lurched violently. A gunshot cracked from somewhere off camera. A body hit the wall. The helmet cam swung, and for one brutal frame Nolan saw a woman in local civilian clothing at the back stairwell, holding a child behind her with one hand and a paper ledger in the other. She was shot before the frame stabilized. The child disappeared into smoke. The ledger hit the floor. The video cut to black. Emma whimpered against Mara's shoulder. "That wasn't in the report," Mara said. "No," Nolan said, because the report had said there were no non-combatants in the rear stairwell. Because Torres had died before debrief. Because someone had rewritten the raid before the dust even settled. Coda growled. Not at the hall this time. At the laptop. Nolan looked down. The encrypted folder had opened another file automatically. A list of names. Transit numbers. Call signs. Payment channels. Shell charities. Procurement fronts. One column labeled domestic safe houses. Another labeled family leverage. He scanned fast. Then he found his own. Hayes/N. Status. Retained asset. Dormant leverage tier. Family created post-separation recovery priority. Shadow duplicate plus child. Nolan went completely still. Mara saw his face change. What? He turned the screen toward her. Her breath caught. Child, she whispered. Emma. Their daughter had never just been collateral tonight. She had been part of the recovery objective. Coda barked once, savage and urgent. A key scraped against the front door. Nolan's head snapped toward the hall. Not forced entry. A key. Mara's voice broke. How many people had access to this house? Nolan's mind flashed through the last here. Contractors. Security installers. Delivery crews. A charity gala Burke's office had sponsored after Nolan retired. A nursery decorator recommended by a friend of Burke's staff. The front door opened. Slowly. No rush. No noise except the soft kiss of the deadbolt turning. Coda spun and launched into the hall. Nolan grabbed the laptop, the drive, and the micro SD, shoved them into the diaper bag on the chair, then snatched Emma's spare blanket and wrapped it around the bag. With his free hand, he pulled Mara toward the bathroom window. Out! Her eyes widened. That's a 2-story drop. The porch awning catches the first fall. Then the lower roof. Then the hedge. I go first. No! He grabbed her face for 1 second, making her look only at him. Whoever just used a key expects us trapped in the master. That gives us one advantage. Surprise! The floor outside the bedroom creaked again. A familiar male voice called softly from the hallway. Nolan? Mara? It's Officer Bell. Stay where you are. We secured the front. Nolan's blood turned to ice. Officer Bell, Neighborhood Patrol Liaison, came by last Christmas toy drive. Shook Nolan's hand. Knew Emma's name before she was born. Mara mouthed. No! The voice in the hall knocked gently on the bedroom wall. Chief? You with me? Coda's roar answered for him. Then came a sharp curse. A scuffle. A gunshot muffled by walls. Nolan shoved open the bathroom window. Cold night air hit hard. He swung one leg over the sill, tested the angle to the porch roof, then looked back. Mara held Emma tighter, but didn't move yet. Now! He said. She stepped toward the window. The bathroom door exploded inward. Briggs. Bloody, half-limp, zip ties dangling from one wrist, one eye swollen shut, but alive and holding a compact pistol in a shaking hand. He smiled through blood. That dog's busy. Nolan moved to shoot. Briggs fired first. The round hit Mara high in the shoulder and spun her halfway into the sink. Emma slipped from her arms. Nolan caught the baby against his chest a fraction before her head struck tile. Mara screamed. Briggs raised the gun again. Coda slammed into the bathroom from the hall with Bell's blood on his jaws and launched straight for Briggs's throat. Briggs got one wild shot off as Coda hit him. The round shattered the medicine cabinet and sent glass exploding into the sink. Then man and dog crashed into the shower wall. Briggs screamed, firing blindly as Coda drove him backward. Nolan dropped with Emma, covering her head, then came up fast and fired one clean round into Briggs's side. The intruder folded. Coda stayed on him until the gun clattered away and Briggs stopped moving except for a wet, choking gasp. Then Nolan turned to Mara. Blood ran bright through her fingers and down her arm, pattering onto the bath mat in fast, terrible drops. High shoulder entry. Maybe through. Maybe worse. Her face had gone gray in seconds. Mara! Look at me! She tried. Failed. Tried again. Nolan passed Emma to Mara's uninjured side only long enough to rip towels from the rack and jam them hard against the wound. Mara cried out and arched. He kept pressure anyway. Outside the bathroom, Coda wheeled back toward the hall and began barking with a fury Nolan had never heard before. More men. And underneath it, faint, almost lost beneath Mara's ragged breathing, came another sound from downstairs. A baby crying? Nolan froze. Emma was in his arms. Mara heard it too. Her eyes widened. No! The cry came again from the first floor. Then, recorded, looped through a speaker. A lure. Someone was using a second infant audio feed to drag him back through the house. Then Officer Bell's voice called from the bedroom, closer now and very much alive. Hayes! Drop the gun and we get the medic in for your wife. Coda answered with a snarl. Nolan looked at the window, at Mara bleeding into his hands, at Emma shaking against his chest, at Briggs dying on the tile, and understood the shape of the trap with sick clarity. They did not need the file immediately anymore. They had what they really wanted. Time. Time for Mara to bleed. Time for Bell to box the exits. Time to force Nolan into surrender by making him choose between fighting and saving her. Mara gripped his wrist with surprising strength. Don't give him the card! Her blood slid warm across his knuckles. The front lawn lit suddenly blue and red through the bathroom window. Real police this time. Or more uniforms. He couldn't know which. And that was the failure. For the first time all night, Nolan Hayes had no safe direction left to move. For one brutal second, Nolan Hayes almost did the unthinkable. He almost shouted for help. The bathroom window flashed blue and red with the wash of arriving patrol lights, and every trained instinct in his body wanted to use them. Law enforcement outside. An officer in the bedroom. A wife bleeding out on the tile. A 6-week-old baby trembling against his chest. It would have been so easy. Drop the gun, open the door, gamble that one uniform in the stack was still clean. Then Coda's growl changed. The German Shepherd was in the bedroom now, not attacking, not retreating, but holding a line between the shattered bathroom doorway and the blood-streaked hall beyond. He was staring not at Briggs dying on the tile, not at the bedroom window, but at Officer Bell's boots just visible past the bed frame. Bell had not moved toward Mara. A real cop who walked into a room with a bleeding civilian and a newborn should have been all urgency, all noise, all pressure for medics. Bell was none of that. He stayed just outside Nolan's angle like a man more worried about getting shot than saving a woman. That told Nolan everything. He tightened the towel pressure against Mara's shoulder and forced his voice steady. Mara! Stay with me! She was shivering hard now, skin losing color under the bathroom light fragments still reflecting from the broken mirror. I'm here, she whispered, though the words came loose and thin. Emma whimpered into Nolan's chest, tiny fingers flexing in blind panic. Blood soaked the towel faster than Nolan liked. High shoulder. Maybe through the clavicle. Maybe nicked artery. Maybe not. But the rate was bad, and he didn't have time to wonder. Officer Bell called from the bedroom again, calm as if this were a traffic stop. Chief, I can help her. You know me. Nolan stared at the door frame and said nothing. Bell tried a different tone. If you wait much longer, she bleeds out. There it was. Not concern. Leverage. Mara heard it too. Nolan saw it in her eyes. She swallowed through pain and whispered, Don't! The baby crying loop downstairs played again. Thin. Tinny. Wrong. A sound trap designed by someone who understood what panic did to exhausted parents. Emma jerked at the noise, trying to answer another infant that did not exist. Nolan's jaw tightened. Bell spoke one more time. You've got 30 seconds before Tactical comes through every opening in this house. Nolan almost laughed. Tactical. In under 10 minutes. For a suburban home invasion with one patrol car first on scene? No. Too fast. Too rehearsed. Too ready. Coda took one step backward into the bathroom and looked up at Nolan. Then, very deliberately, he turned his head toward the linen closet beside the vanity and pawed once at the bottom panel. Nolan frowned. "Not now, buddy." Coda pawed again, harder this time, then snapped back toward the bedroom with a bark. Not random. Not stress. Instruction. The linen closet. Nolan shifted Emma to his left arm, kept his pistol ready in the right, and used his foot to kick the closet door open. Towels, cleaning supplies, first aid kit, spare soap. Nothing useful at first glance. Then he saw what Coda had caught. The back wall of the closet had been cut and resealed around a narrow maintenance hatch no contractor had any reason to access from this side. Fresh paint covered the seam, but the screws were newer than everything around them. A service chase. Maybe electrical. Maybe plumbing. Maybe big enough to pass something through the wall. Or someone. Nolan dragged the bathroom rug aside, set Emma for 1 second in a blanket nest between Mara's knees, and ripped the closet panel free with the butt of his pistol. Dust burst out. Behind it ran a narrow crawl channel between the bathroom wall and the stairwell core, descending toward the first floor. New cable bundles had been zip-tied along the old framing. Buried among them was a black hard case. Nolan stared. Why wire a service chase behind the master bath unless you needed invisible access to the second floor? Surveillance, backup routes, dead drops, kill wiring. Whoever built the trap had modified his house long before tonight. Bell must have heard the panel tear free. "Hayes?" No answer. Nolan opened the case. Inside were 6 laminated photo cards, a burned phone, 2 injectable vials, and a folded packet of hospital paperwork. The first photo card showed Emma's nursery from above. The second showed Mara in the kitchen holding a coffee mug taken through the back garden glass. The third showed Nolan in the garage, kneeling beside the old deployment trunk months earlier, unaware he was being watched. The fourth froze his blood. It showed Mara leaving a downtown cafe that afternoon. Across from her at the outdoor table sat a woman in a navy coat and dark sunglasses. Evelyn Voss. But Voss was not the frightening part. The frightening part was the man standing 30 feet behind Mara in the same frame, pretending to read his phone. Officer Bell. Nolan flipped to the next card. Bell again. This time in plain clothes outside Emma's pediatric clinic 2 weeks earlier. The next, Bell shaking Nolan's hand at the Christmas toy drive. Same smile. Same eyes. Same dead stillness around them. Not a compromised neighborhood cop. Embedded surveillance. Family proximity. He unfolded the hospital packet. Birth records. Emma's. Not copies stolen from a pediatric office. Originals. Full notation, maternal intake, blood typing, delivery complications, NICU contingency forms, footprint strip, the kind of packet only a hospital archive or someone with postnatal access should have possessed. Mara saw the pages and went pale even through the blood loss. "Why would they have that?" Nolan's heartbeat slowed into something cold. "Because Emma was never just leverage." Bell's voice sharpened from the bedroom. "Nolan, I'm losing patience." Good, Nolan thought. Lose more. He turned another page in the packet. A yellow sticky note was attached to the intake form in black handwriting. Verify maternal bloodline / confirm infant match. For a moment, the room stopped making sense. Nolan read it again. Then a third time. Maternal bloodline. Infant match. Not paternity. Not insurance fraud. Not kidnapping for ransom. Screening. Mara stared at the note, confusion overtaking pain for 1 second. "What does that even mean?" Nolan did not answer because part of his mind had already gone backward through the evening and found the detail it had shoved aside in the rush. The thermal tag placed beside Emma in the bed had not just transmitted position. Its casing had held a microneedle pad under the adhesive. Too small to injure, too small to even notice in the moment. Biometric collection. Bell called from the bedroom, louder now. "Chief, if you don't come out, I come in." Coda answered with a snarl so savage it made Emma flinch. Nolan shoved the cards and paperwork into the diaper bag with the drives. Then he opened the burned phone. Dead screen. He popped the battery panel. A micropaper slip fell into his palm. 3 words. Mother was inside. The air left Nolan's lungs. Kandahar. Back stairwell. The woman in the helmet cam footage shot while shielding a child and holding a ledger. Mother was inside. Not random notation. Not location shorthand. A truth marker. Mara saw his face change. "Nolan, what is it?" He looked at her and for the first time all night felt genuine fear that had nothing to do with bullets, bombs, or compromised police. The woman in the video had the same eyes as Mara. Not similar. The same. He had missed it in the dust and grain in shock. Missed it because he never expected the past to be sitting at his own dinner table for 6 years, laughing softly while folding baby clothes. Mara whispered, "Why are you looking at me like that?" Before he could answer, Bell stepped into the bathroom doorway. Gun raised. Badge visible. Uniform immaculate. Coda launched instantly, but Bell had prepared for that. He fired not at Nolan, not at Mara, but at the ceiling directly above the dog. The blast deafened the room for a second and bought Bell exactly the fraction he wanted. He kicked the diaper bag away from Nolan's reach and leveled the weapon at Emma. Everything stopped. Bell's face lost the last traces of neighborhood warmth. "Now we can stop pretending this is about a drive." Nolan went very still. "What is it about?" Bell smiled once, small and ugly. Then he looked straight at Mara and said the words that tore the whole night open. "Ask your wife why Burke wants the baby tested against the woman your team left in Kandahar." And for the first time, even Mara looked like she was hearing the truth too late. For one suspended second, nobody in the bathroom moved. Officer Bell stood in the doorway with his gun leveled at Emma, his badge catching broken light from the shattered mirror. Coda crouched low between Bell and the tub, every muscle locked, a warning rumbling through his chest. Nolan knelt beside Mara, one blood-soaked hand pressed to her shoulder, the other near his pistol, already knowing he was one wrong twitch away from watching his daughter die. Then Bell said it again. "Ask your wife why Burke wants the baby tested against the woman your team left in Kandahar." Emma whimpered inside the towels. Mara stared at Bell. "What did you say?" Bell did not look at her. "You heard me." Nolan's voice came out flat. "Start explaining." Bell gave the smallest shrug. "I'm not your historian. I'm your retrieval man." Coda barked once. Bell lowered the muzzle a fraction toward Emma's chest. "And the dog dies first if he comes again." That froze even Coda. Not because the shepherd was afraid. Because he understood the line. Nolan did too. No clean shot. No clean angle. Bell had used the doorway perfectly. Hard frame at his back. Wounded wife in Nolan's peripheral vision. Infant as center leverage. Exit lane clear. Professional. Rehearsed. This house had not been invaded by men improvising a snatch. It had been turned into a recovery site. Mara's breathing came shallow with pain. "Nolan!" He did not look at her yet. He could not. Not after the note, the hospital file, the old video, and the woman in Kandahar who had looked enough like Mara to crack open every sealed memory from that raid. Bell almost smiled. "Now you're seeing the shape of it." Nolan kept his eyes on the gun. "Talk." Bell's expression tightened. "Not here. Then die here." Bell laughed softly. "You're in no position to threaten anyone, Chief. Your wife is bleeding. Your daughter is an asset under verification. Your dog is one command away from getting ventilated. Mara flinched at the word asset. Bell flicked his eyes toward her. That bothers you, doesn't it? Mara's face went white. I don't know what you think I am. No, Bell said. But you're beginning to know what you were. That sentence hit Nolan harder than he expected. Were. Bell was not talking like a man exposing a current accomplice. He was talking like a man retrieving something misplaced from a file that should have remained buried. Mara saw Nolan's face change. Please don't shut me out right now. I swear to God, Nolan, I don't know what he means. Bell sighed. Of course you don't. Burke always preferred soft conditioning to retain memory. Better outcomes. Cleaner domestic integration. Domestic integration. The phrase made Nolan's skin crawl. Families became cover stories. Children became evidence. Bell went on. You think tonight is a break-in. It isn't. It's a delayed collection event after years of dormancy. The shadow duplicate reactivated the chain. The infant accelerated the schedule. Mara looked sick. Stop calling her that. Then stop making this harder. Nolan's fingers tightened on the towel pressed to Mara's wound. Time was collapsing. He needed pressure, movement, and exit. Instead, he was trapped in a bathroom with a compromised officer, a wounded wife, a screaming baby, and a dog holding violence back by instinct. Then Coda did something strange. He stopped looking at Bell. Instead, the shepherd turned his head toward Mara, sniffed once into the air between them, and let out a short, confused whine. Not accusation. Recognition mixed with distress. Bell heard it and smiled. Dogs always know before people do. That's what Burke liked about them. Nolan's eyes narrowed. Burke knew Coda? Bell's smile sharpened. That was enough answer. Coda had come through a retired working dog placement Nolan had trusted without question. Burke funded half those transition charities. Nolan suddenly saw another layer of the trap. Not that Coda had been planted, but that someone in Burke's orbit had known exactly what kind of dog Nolan would choose. Bell, Nolan said quietly, you're talking too much. Bell's eyes hardened. Only because I'm tired of pretending you matter more than the baby. Mara made a broken sound. Why? Bell's gun never wavered. Because if the bloodline confirms, Burke doesn't just recover a file tonight. He recovers proof the Kandahar ledger survived beyond the raid. Living proof. Biometric proof. Nolan felt his spine lock. The woman from the helmet cam footage flashed through his mind again, the one in the back stairwell, shielding a child with one arm and clutching the ledger before she was shot. The note on the burned phone, Mother was inside. If that woman was tied to Mara by blood, if Mara had been connected to the original target without knowing it, then Emma was not just leverage. She was evidence. Bell saw understanding hit and nodded. Better. Mara shook her head despite the pain. No. That's impossible. My mother died when I was a kid. Bell finally looked at her directly. Did she? The question punched every other sound out of the room. Even Emma quieted for half a second. Mara stared at Bell. What did you just say? Bell waited, wanting the silence. Then, softly, he said, You buried a woman. That doesn't mean you buried your mother. Mara's whole body trembled. Nolan almost looked at her. Almost. But Coda saved him from that mistake. The dog's ears snapped toward the hall, then the ceiling, then back to Bell. A new sound had entered the house. Soft. Electronic. Fast. A chirp. Then another. Nolan knew that sound. Remote signal handshake. Not from Bell's radio. From the diaper bag outside the bathroom. Bell heard it too, and for the first time all night, irritation crossed his face. What did you activate? Nolan asked. Bell did not answer. The chirping sped up. Mara looked between them, terrified. What is that? Nolan's mind jumped to the microSD and the encrypted folder. Not just storage. A trigger. A beacon. An uploader. Something in the data package had been designed to call outward when opened. Bell's jaw tightened. You should have surrendered before the card authenticated. Authenticated? There it was. Not random self-opening behavior. Recognition sequence. The chirps became rapid and insistent. Then the lights outside the bathroom window changed. No longer just local police red and blue. Now hard white beams swept the yard. Multiple vehicles. Wider perimeter. Too many engines. Bell heard them and cursed under his breath. Damn it! Coda barked once, explosive. Nolan saw the shift and took it. Bell's attention had moved outward by less than a second. Nolan lunged not at the officer, but at the shower curtain rod above the tub. He ripped it free and swung the metal bar across Bell's gun wrist with everything he had. The shot went off, deafening in tile. The round punched into the ceiling. Coda launched. This time Bell had no perfect angle. He stumbled backward as the shepherd hit him high and drove him into the doorframe. The pistol flew from his hand and vanished under the bed. Bell got one forearm across Coda's throat and the other hand to a knife at his vest. Nolan crashed into them before the blade cleared. The three of them hit the bedroom floor in glass, blood, and broken wood. Bell was stronger than he looked, compact, trained, vicious in close quarters. He hammered an elbow into Nolan's throat, rolled, and tried to rise. Coda clamped onto his shoulder harness and ripped him sideways. Bell snarled and slashed backward with a half-drawn knife. The blade caught Coda along the ribs. The dog yelped. Nolan saw red. He drove Bell's head into the bedframe once, twice, then seized the officer's badge chain and looped it around Bell's throat from behind. Bell thrashed, slammed backward into the dresser, and nearly took Nolan with him, but Coda stayed attached, dragging him off balance again and again. Mara staggered out of the bathroom with one hand over her wound. Emma clutched tight against her good side. Nolan! He looked up just in time to see movement at the shattered bedroom window. Red laser. Second shooter. Down! He roared. Mara dropped behind the overturned nightstand as the window exploded inward with suppressed fire. One round tore through the mattress. Another struck Bell high in the back while Nolan still held him. For one confused instant Bell froze, hit by his own side. His eyes widened, not with pain but betrayal. Then the outside shooter adjusted for a cleaner line toward Mara and Emma. Coda released Bell and hurled himself at the window just as the next volley came through. Glass, muzzle flash, barking Mara's cry, Emma screaming, Nolan reaching blindly for the pistol under the bed. Everything collapsed into one violent second. And through it all, from downstairs, the front door opened again and a new voice thundered into the house. Federal agents! Drop your weapons! Bell, half choking on his own blood, started laughing. Because Nolan understood the danger a second too late. If Burke had been warned the card authenticated, then whoever had just entered in federal gear might not be rescue. It might be recovery. The voice from downstairs hit the house like a flashbang. Federal agents! Drop your weapons! For one fractured second, it almost sounded like salvation. Boots pounded through the first floor. Men shouted. Radio chatter snapped through the entry hall. White beams cut across the staircase and flashed under the bedroom threshold. Then Bell started laughing. Not hard. Just enough to tell Nolan everything he needed to know. The compromised officer was half on his knees, blood spreading through the back of his uniform where the outside shooter had tagged him. Coda stood between the shattered window and the bed, chest heaving, one flank marked by the knife slice. Mara crouched behind the overturned nightstand with Emma against her good shoulder, face white with blood loss. And Bell laughed. Because the men announcing themselves as federal agents had come too fast. Because rescue and recovery could wear the same badges. Nolan drove Bell face first into the floorboards. "How many?" he hissed. Bell coughed blood and grinned at the carpet. "Enough." Coda barked once toward the bedroom door. A cone of white light swept the hall, and a voice called up the stairs, all command. "Chief Hayes, this is Federal Response. Announce yourself." Nolan's mind split instantly. Bell was dirty. The outside shooter was still in play. Mara was bleeding too fast. If the incoming team was real, delaying could kill her. If they were part of Burke's network, surrendering Emma ended everything. He needed proof. He seized Bell by the hair. "Who's downstairs?" Bell rasped. "Depends which side of the paperwork you trust." Not enough. The bedroom floor was chaos. Broken mirror glass, blood, the bed shower rod, the diaper bag half beneath the dresser, the laptop still glowing. Nolan's eyes flicked to the bag. The files. The card had authenticated something. Maybe it could identify them. He dragged Bell backward by the badge chain, kicked the sidearm farther under the bed, then ripped the laptop back open with one hand. News status text flashed in red. Handshake complete trust chain available. Select authority key. Below it ran a fast populating list of agency signatures and verification hashes. Some were green, some yellow. 2 were redlined with a warning. Burke override path field recovery authorized as pulse slowed into ice. The microSD had not just transmitted outward. It was a deadman verifier, built to separate clean receivers from poison teams. Outside the bedroom, the voice came again. "Hayes! We have 1 county officer down. We are moving to your floor in 10 seconds. County officer down. Bell? That checked. Still not enough. Nolan scanned the list. FBI SRT. U.S. Marshals Liaison. Internal Defense Investigative Cell. Then 1 entry pulse green and expanded automatically. Evelyn Voss / direct channel available. Mara saw the name. "That's the woman." Bell's face changed for the first time. Recognition. And hatred. Good. Nolan tapped the channel. A woman answered on the first ring. "Hayes, if you open this line, you are out of time. Do not surrender Emma to anyone in local, county, DHS tasking, or federal tactical without phrase verification. Prove you're real." 3 things, Boss said instantly. 1. Bell's federal file name is Thomas Keene. 2. The woman in the Kandahar stairwell was not killed on sight. The footage was edited after impact. 3. If Mara Hayes is who I think she is, the phrase you need from any clean team is "let your mothers live twice." If they don't know it, shoot your way out. Bell went perfectly still. Nolan believed her immediately. Because of Bell's face. He closed the channel fast. The voice downstairs shouted again. "Federal team coming up." Nolan looked at Mara. She was shaking hard now, blood soaking through the pressure wrap. Emma pressed so close against her that the baby's cries had weakened into little gasps. Coda kept looking between Bell, the door, and the shattered window. The dog was choosing priorities. Nolan did the same. He hauled Bell upright by the collar and shoved him into the bedroom doorway as living cover. "Coda, window!" The shepherd sprinted to the shattered frame and planted there, guarding the flank from the outside shooter. Nolan called toward the hall. "Phrase verification." A pause. Too long. Then the voice downstairs answered, sharp with annoyance. "Chief, don't make this harder." That was all Nolan needed. He fired through the doorway before the fake federal team reached the landing. The round passed Bell's shoulder and smashed into the wall beside the lead operator's face. The man cursed and dropped back. Return fire detonated through the hallway, chewing the frame to splinters. "They're dirty!" Nolan shouted. Mara didn't answer. She was slipping. Nolan saw it in her eyes. No more holding. He needed a route. Coda answered before he could form one. The shepherd barked twice at the broken bedroom window, then leapt onto the sill, turned, and barked again, hard, urgent. The roof. Nolan crossed to the window and risked one glance out. The blast-damaged porch awning sloped toward the garage roof. From there, a narrow drop reached the hedges beside the side gate. The front of the house was flooded by lights and vehicles. The backyard remained darker. Possible. Barely. He turned back just as Bell made his move. The compromised officer drove backward with sudden force, slamming Nolan into the wall and wrenching free. He snatched a broken lamp base and swung it at Mara, not to kill her, but to knock Emma from her arms. Coda crossed the room like a missile. The shepherd hit Bell in the ribs and sent both of them crashing into the dresser. Drawers burst open. With split, Bell's head struck the corner and blood sprayed the wallpaper. He still kept fighting. Nolan reached them in 2 steps and hammered Bell once across the jaw, then again. This time the man sagged. Not out. Close enough. Mara! Her eyes had gone glassy. He knelt, took Emma long enough to tighten the pressure wrap with both hands, then forced Mara to look at him. Stay with me. I'm trying. Good. We're going out the window. Her gaze drifted toward the shattered glass and sloped roof and almost broke. With her? With all of us? Below, the fake federal team reached the upstairs landing. Nolan heard them stacking on the hall wall, heard one man murmur, "Flashing first," heard another curse when he realized the hallway bag still sat live under the stairs. That bought seconds. Only seconds. Nolan shoved the laptop, drives, and hospital packet into the diaper bag and slung it across his chest. Then he tore the curtains free, knotted them around Mara's waist and under her uninjured arm to make a drag sling, and wrapped Emma tight against his own torso beneath his jacket. Coda came to his side at once, panting, blood on his muzzle, eyes burning with the same clarity that had saved them all night. You first, Nolan whispered. Clear the roof. The dog bounded through the window and vanished into the dark. The first flashbang hit the bedroom door a heartbeat later. Nolan saw it come in low, spinning over the carpet. He threw himself over Mara just as it detonated. Light consumed the room. What? Total. Sound torn open into a flat screaming void. Emma convulsed against his chest. Mara went limp under him for one horrifying instant. Somewhere beyond the ringing, men shouted and boots crashed through the doorway. Nolan moved on instinct. Up. Lift Mara by the sling. Drive for the window. The room behind him was only shapes now. Weapon lights through smoke, operators yelling, Bell half-conscious on the floor, Coda barking from the roof, another man shouting, "The infant!" Nolan kicked through the remaining glass and hauled Mara out onto the sloped awning. The porch roof flexed under their combined weight. Emma screamed. Gunfire cracked behind them. One round punched through the siding inches from Mara's head. Then a different voice thundered from the front yard through a loud hailer. Thomas Keene! This perimeter is under federal counterintelligence authority. Stand down! The fake team inside hesitated. Only for a fraction. But it was enough. Nolan dragged Mara across the awning and onto the garage roof as Coda reappeared at his left shoulder. Sirens multiplied now, converging from both ends of the block. Spotlights swept the street. Men shouted conflicting commands. Maybe Voss's people. Maybe more corruption. Maybe both. Mara slipped halfway unconscious in the sling. Nolan caught her under the good arm and looked toward the side hedge where escape still seemed possible. Then he saw what waited below. 3 figures in dark tactical jackets stood by the side gate with rifles up, watching the roof line. And the man in the center, silver-haired even in the floodlights, lifted his face just enough for Nolan to recognize him. Admiral Owen Burke had come in person, and he was smiling up at the baby in Nolan's arms. For one suspended second, Nolan Hayes forgot the glass in his palms, the blood on the shingles, and the gunfire below. He only saw Admiral Owen Burke standing by the side gate with floodlights silvering his hair, and that calm smile fixed on the baby bundled against Nolan's chest. Emma. That was the center of it. Coda stood at Nolan's left flank, chest heaving, one side cut from Belle's knife. Mara sagged in the curtain sling, half-conscious. Sirens multiplied at both ends of the street. Spotlights crossed over one another. Inside the house, fake federal operators were still shouting. Somewhere beyond the front yard, Voss's people were shouting back. Burke raised an empty hand. "Nolan, let me help you bring them down. You built this. I contained it." Mara heard that through the blood-lost haze. "Nolan, stay with me," he said without looking away from Burke. The men beside Burke adjusted their aim upward. Burke took one step closer. "Your wife needs surgery. Your daughter needs to be secured. And you need to stop believing every badge tonight belongs to me." From the front of the property, a female voice boomed through a loud hailer. "Owen Burke, this scene is under federal counterintelligence authority. Any movement toward the roof will be treated as hostile." Evelyn Voss. Burke did not even look toward the sound. "Nolan," Burke said again, "stay up there much longer and somebody less disciplined than me kills your wife by accident." Coda growled. Not at Burke alone. At the men behind him. The leftmost operator had shifted his weight, bringing his muzzle tighter toward Mara's center line. Coda caught it first. The dog barked once, explosive. Burke's eyes flicked to him. "Still extraordinary." Nolan's voice went flat. "You don't get to talk about him." A crash sounded inside the house. Then another. Windows on the lower floor burst outward as a second team entered from the rear. Commands overlapped in the night. "Clear the first floor. Hold fire. Find the infant." Then Coda did the thing that decided it. The shepherd turned away from Burke and faced the back side of the garage roof, toward the narrow strip above the neighbor's cedar fence. He barked twice, then looked back at Nolan. Across. Nolan followed the line. The back slope dropped to the rain gutter above the side fence. From there, maybe 8 feet to the top rail, and a hard fall into the alley hedge. With Mara bleeding and Emma strapped to his chest, it was insane. Which meant no one below had set their main angles for it. Burke saw Nolan's glance shift and understood instantly. "Don't." "Good." Nolan dragged Mara one step higher. "Mara, listen to me." She was barely conscious now. "I'm here. When I move, don't fight the pull. You're not dragging me off a roof. I am if that's what gets you out alive." A broken breath escaped her. Almost a laugh. Still romantic. Because beneath the blood and lies, that was still Mara. The woman who had painted moons on the nursery wall and accused him of hanging the mobile like he was breaching a room. The woman who had hidden the copy. The woman who had still taken a bullet trying to keep Emma in her arms. Burke called up again. "If you move toward the rear slope, my men will treat you as a fleeing hostile with compromised evidence." "You mean my daughter?" Burke did not answer. Nolan shouted toward the front street. "Raise verification." For one awful second, nothing came back but sirens and commands. Then Voss's voice cut through the noise. "Let your mothers live twice." Burke's jaw hardened. Burke snapped a hand toward his men. "Take the shot if he breaks the line." Coda launched before the order finished. The shepherd did not go for Burke. He went for the rifleman on the left, the one inching his muzzle toward Mara. Coda hit him high and drove him backward into the shrubs bordering the garage. The man fired wildly. The round blew sparks from the gutter instead of flesh. Nolan moved at the same instant. He hauled Mara by the sling and drove across the roof pitch, half running, half sliding, Emma crushed tight against his sternum. Mara cried out once as the movement ripped her wound wider. Gunfire erupted below. Nolan hit the back ridge and dropped. For one violent second, there was only gravity. He landed on the lower slope shoulder first, slid hard, boots clawing for purchase, Mara dragging behind him, Emma pinned under his jacket. The gutter exploded loose as he caught it. Then Kota was there. The dog bounded over the ridge, planted his back legs against the slope, and caught the curtain sling in his teeth. He could not stop all the weight, but he changed it. Just enough. Nolan kicked off the wall, dropped to the top rail of the cedar fence, felt the wood crack, then threw his body sideways into the hedge beyond. Mara hit beside him in a crushing tangle of cloth and branches. Emma screamed once and then, horrifyingly, went quiet. Nolan's heart stopped. He ripped open the jacket front. Emma stared back at him, stunned, eyes wide, alive. No time. Alley darkness closed around them. Kota landed on his feet, spun, and faced the roof above. Silhouettes appeared at the edge line. Burke's men. Then other shapes on the neighboring house. Voss's team closing. The alley gate banged open. A woman in a dark tactical jacket entered first, pistol down but ready, eyes finding the infant before anything else. "Phrase?" Nolan barked. She did not hesitate. "Ledger mothers live twice." Evelyn Voss. Behind her came 2 medics and 3 agents in unmarked armor. One medic dropped to Mara's side. Another reached for Emma. Nolan pulled back half a step. "No!" Voss met his eyes. "If you don't let my medic check her airway in the next 10 seconds, your caution becomes the thing that kills her." He let the medic in. Emma protested weakly. Good. The medic worked fast. Mara was worse. The shoulder wound had soaked through everything. As the medic cut fabric away, Voss crouched beside Nolan and handed him a sealed photograph packet. "You need this before Burke spins the rest." Nolan opened it. Inside was the full frame from Kandahar, sharper than the helmet cam still. The woman in the stairwell had blood on her side, one hand shielding a small girl behind her. On the back, typed and verified, was one line, mother identified, Layla Maroof child unrecovered Maroof. Mara. Nolan looked up slowly. Voss nodded once. "Your wife isn't a mole. She's the surviving child from that stairwell. Burke's network buried her through adoption channels after the raid. When Emma was born, the bloodline reappeared in systems tied to the original Ledger families." Mara heard enough through the pain to start crying silently. Burke's voice thundered from somewhere beyond the hedge line. "That child is federal evidence." Voss rose and shouted back. "No, Owen. She's your indictment." Then everything broke open. Gunfire from the roof line. Agents moving. Lights converging. Command splitting the alley. Burke was running. Voss's team surged toward the side street. Nolan started to rise with them on instinct, but Mara's fingers found his wrist and held. Weakly, desperately, human. She was half-conscious, tears and rain and blood together on her face. "Don't leave," she whispered. 3 years of war had trained one response into him when men fled with the truth. Chase. But this was not Kandahar. Not Torres. Emma was breathing in a medic's arms. Mara was alive beneath his hand. Kota stood bloodied at his shoulder, watching Burke's escape route, but not moving because Nolan had not moved. The choice was suddenly simple. Nolan looked toward the alley mouth where Voss's agents were pursuing the collapsing network and the silver-haired architect who had tried to own his family. Then he knelt fully beside Mara and took her hand. "Not this time," he said. Above them, dawn finally began to thin the sky. Blue light touched the alley fence. Police radios softened into distance. Paramedics lifted Mara to the stretcher. The medic placed Emma back against Nolan's chest once her breathing steadied. Coda came last. The shepherd limped over, ribs cut, paws torn, and rested his head against Nolan's knee as if checking one final time that the threshold had held. Nolan put one hand on Emma, one on Mara's stretcher, one in Coda's fur. Burke was still out there. The network would still have teeth. Morning would bring arrests, evidence chains, and truths too painful to open all at once. But the house had not taken them. The hallway bomb had not taken them. Kandahar had not finished the job. And in the pale first light of morning, with sirens fading and his family still breathing, Nolan finally understood why Coda had blocked the nursery door. The dog had not just sensed danger. He had recognized a pattern Nolan almost died repeating. The fastest path to the people you love is not always the right one. Sometimes love sounds like a growl in the dark. Sometimes it looks like a dog refusing to move. This time, Nolan listened. And because he did, when the sun finally rose over the broken roofline, no one inside his arms was missing.